A debate about the limit of free speech.
I think Nazis are terrible. Their ideology is truly hateful, and I believe that whenever someone publicly displays a swastika, they should face consequences from those around them. However, I don't think it should be illegal for individuals to express their views in public. While it may be easy to ban Nazi symbols, allowing the government to prohibit any speech that doesn't pose an immediate threat could lead to a dangerous slippery slope. For instance, some politicians in the US might want to ban the display of the pride flag and other symbols they deem hateful. Allowing those in power to decide which symbols can be expressed and which statements can be made establishes a dangerous precedent that could destroy free speech in the long run.
What do we gain from flying Nazi flags? How does that benefit our society? We already know the consequences of Nazi ideas and their ultimate goals. Nazis would round up people and kill those they deemed worthy of killing. So why should we allow the symbols of those who caused the deaths of millions of people? Knowing their ultimate goals, it seems unwise to let Nazis gather and spread their views.
I would argue that this alone is not enough evidence to completely ban the symbol. Your opinion is valid and I agree with it, but I believe we shouldn't outlaw free speech simply because we disagree with its message.
My country, the Netherlands, was occupied by Nazi Germany for 5 long years. People were deported, tortured, and starved. My grandfather spent 3 years in a concentration camp. Although he survived, he never fully recovered. Considering this, appeals to freedom of speech for Nazis seem ignorant and laughable to me. Any form of Nazi symbolism is considered an immediate threat and therefore illegal when used to promote Nazis. My perspective is based on practical reality rather than theoretical idealism. Preventing Nazis from gaining influence again is more important to us than free speech. By throwing the world into a horrible war, Nazis have forfeited rights like these. Tough shit. Besides, no country has absolute free speech. There are limitations everywhere. It's just a matter of where the line is drawn.
I acknowledge that Nazis committed terrible acts, and I agree that we should prevent them from gaining political power. However, what about those who argue that openly discussing extremist ideologies is the best defense against them? I believe that a college student with a few classes on National Socialism understands why it is bad and evil, while another person who never heard of National Socialism until later keeps asking about it, only to be shut down with, "They're evil, just accept that." Additionally, the more these people are pushed away, the more likely they may feel that fellow extremists are the only ones who understand them. In the long run, this may lead down an undesirable path. I don't know the right answer or the best way to keep bad ideologies out of power, but I'm not entirely convinced that banning discussions about them altogether is the right solution. If we don't openly learn about why something is bad, we may end up learning why it is good in the shadows.
No one is preventing you from discussing about them. Half of my high school history lessons were about World War II. We can educate about it without giving them a platform to respond. That's what happens when you cause the deaths of millions of people. What's the point of providing Nazis a platform to speak, apart from upholding absolute free speech? There's no other side or justification for their actions. What do you hope to hear from them that isn't hate? What's the purpose?
To what extent should we restrict free speech then? Should the government decide which symbols of ideologies are allowed and which symbols are forbidden? What is the difference between the swastika and the pride flag if the conservative government dislikes both?
Free speech concerning those issues is already restricted, and for good reason. If someone uses a megaphone to make a speech advocating for the extermination of a certain ethnic group because they consider them inferior, that person should be arrested for hate speech and incitement to violence. The display of the Nazi flag carries exactly those connotations, and anyone can understand this subtext. It's not merely a cool historical artifact, it represents a genocidal ideology. Displaying it in public is a way of promoting this ideology. I understand the slippery slope argument, but it's not the same. The pride flag celebrates a specific group but is not connected to the desire to exterminate another group. Conservatives may feel uncomfortable with homosexuality, but that's their issue. Nobody is preventing them from being straight just because of pride. Nazis were not celebrating their Germanic roots. Their agenda included the literal extermination of other ethnic groups. It's not about someone feeling uncomfortable with the Nazi ideology, it's that this ideology is inherently hateful.
I believe this is actually dangerous because who gets to decide which symbols are calls to violence? Should a hammer and sickle symbol also be banned? How about a Trump hat or a rainbow flag? Some people would argue that those symbols represent violence. This is an incredibly slippery slope that could result in banning any speech that goes against the group in power.
The problem isn't if we all agree that Nazis are bad or not. The problem lies in not having a consistent and objective methodology and set of rules for limiting speech. We need a test criteria that isn't simply based on subjective notions like, we should ban things that are bad. A possible solution would be this: we establish the test criteria. If violence is undetachable from the ideology, we would need an independent panel to sort out which symbols are intrinsically supporting violence and which aren't. There is no such thing as a peaceful Nazi, therefore the swastika will most definitely be banned, but the panel has to decide for themselves if hammer and sickle, the MAGA hat or the pride flag, fall under the category intrinsically violent. Free speech is not absolute, but the guidelines and restrictions have to be made as clear as possible, so no government can abuse the free speech restrictions for their political goals.